What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Week 2 review show. I'm your host, JSU. We got K Falik, we got Toe Tag and Tambo, and we're going to talk everything Week 2. We got a few lineups we're going to review from some members. We're going to review some of the Millie-making winning lineups and some of the lineups that just almost edged out the Millie Maker and came in second or third. We're going to talk all about Week 2, though. We want to review some lineups, and just kind of an overview review on the slate. So let me bring in my guys. First off, obviously hit the like button and hit that subscribe button, that red button at the bottom right corner. We appreciate it. K Falik, let's bring you in here first. What's going on, brother?
How's it going? Doing all right over here. Didn't have a good Sunday afternoon. I played heavy on the early side of things, specifically the game that ended up being the worst game of the slate in these Eagles San Francisco game. But I know some members had a good day with the late side. Made up some good money on the Showdown. It required one move and one move only that I felt good about, which was fading Tyreek Hill, and then you were pretty good to go. But it was a fun week. Some interesting games, lots of stuff to talk about after.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a real interesting slate. Tambo, I know you had some good thoughts on the slate. I thought prior to the slate starting, you had some real ways to get different. I think a lot of the strategy stuff you were giving out on a lot of the shows, some of it worked out really well. If people were listening to you, I think you gave out some good nuggets.
Yeah, like I said last week, I loved Week 2. I didn't love it as much as it ended, I'll say that, but a lot of things I got right. The Henry call off that Dallas Chargers game, to me, I think that's going to be a big conversation. What we talk about here in reviewing the week, when you've got 4 games with the same total, then why does one get favorited over the others? That's more of a thought process to me of when it's the only game and you know it's going to be the nuts, how do we get different within it? And do we overstack it or go crazy with it? Versus here, we had so many pivot options, and I think every single one of them beat it, or at least had a chance to in that afternoon slate. So it was very close in that sense. Not a great week overall, just on some of the other stuff. Not enough. I never get Kupp and Woods right. So, of course, I was overweight Woods, underweight Kupp, different situational stuff like that. But for the most part, had a really good slate plan. It just didn't play out completely for me.
Yeah, Tambo, I'm with you. I think we were on some of the similar kind of strategy stuffs, especially when it came to. I know we were 2 of the only people who were on Derrick Henry. I know that for a fact. Not a lot of people liked him. That's probably why he came in at like 4 or 5%. And he's one of those guys, when he goes off, he just crushes. And me and you were both saying kind of similar things when it's like, if you think that game is a shootout, when they get in shootouts, Derrick Henry has so many opportunities to score in the red zone and in the goal line situations. And people don't realize that. People just think, if it's a back and forth game, like they're throwing the ball constantly, they're worried about them trailing. No, let me tell you right now, when you have Derrick Henry on your team, when you get in the goal line situations in the red zone, you're still giving him the damn ball. I don't care if you're trailing, if you're not. And he's got the upside to rip 60-yard runs. And that's what he did. He was just a beast. He completely flipped the slate, even more than what Tyreek Hill did in Week 1. It was just like he was pretty much a must. And, I saw some guys without Derrick Henry who had pretty good teams and were in leads in some of these Millie Makers going up for a long time in the 4 p.m. games, and then they got edged out like at the very end. And I'm sure they're not very happy this morning.
Yeah, and he was so low owned, like you said. I think it was 7% in the $20, $5 in the mega. We're going to be reviewing both of those tournaments today on this show. But just in general, I think one of the things is I played him mostly with Russell Wilson, thinking to double down, sort of a way that you can go about it. I did still have him in some other builds, but it was just that situation of also wanting to pay up. We talked about it in Week 1 where everyone was paying down to those 3K guys this past week. And then it ended up being all the mid-tier guys. This past week was a lot of the chalk range was in the mid-tier running backs and stuff like that, where you could go up to CMC, Henry, Cook, all these other guys. And not all of them worked out, but I'm just saying when you do that and go with a separate path altogether, it does give you the opportunity for that to be the case and land on some of those Henry builds within lineups with Kyler and, Rondale Moore back to the well and then flop lag in general. We talked a little bit about it last week. Rondale Moore being a really good example there. of a guy that failed everybody week one and then absolutely dominated. Loved his touchdown, by the way, where he fist pumped before he got in the end zone. Just so pumped to get his first touchdown. Just love to see that in the NFL. So that was great.
Yeah, I'm a big Rondale Moore guy. As a talent, I think he's just he's so talented. Always, it's health with him. That was the big worry, I think, coming out was him staying healthy. But man, he looks like he could be an absolute stud. And the thing with Rondale Moore is people don't realize this, but Kyler is the perfect freaking quarterback for him because that dude, when he gets out of the pocket and starts moving, he can scramble for as long as everyone, and he will keep his eyes down the field. He's not the Lamar who's just looking to run constantly. He will still be looking to throw the ball. And Rondale Moore, when it's time to scramble, I mean, that dude can scramble and he can find an opening. And Kyler and him are going to be really good together. I think as we saw and we'll continue to see, I think you're going to see a lot more of those kind of just when Kyler starts scrambling, he's going to start to look for where Rondale is because Rondale is sneaky enough. He's quick enough to find an opening, scramble away from his defender when things
he's usually open. That's why people said yesterday, it's almost unfair. He's down the field in some way, shape, or form. And, Kyler, like you said, he's throwing fadeaway passes. Got Mahomes throwing sidearm passes. And then last night you had Lamar throwing the jump shot pass. So, you got all these guys just throwing it up. It's incredible watching these talents. That game last night, by the way, was off topic here for a second, but was incredible and quite the bounce back. I almost feel like we're 1-1. We're making up for that Raiders loss because I thought we would lose against the Chiefs. And I'm talking about the Ravens, my squad that I love so much. And I'm happy to get that W last night and get that monkey off our back of beating the Chiefs with Lamar. So great game last night, though. Every game the Ravens in so far has been the game of the year. I know it's only 2 game sample size, but
K-Fallic, isn't it crazy how like the NFL, I mean, when you talk about a week-to-week league, you take the Raiders versus Baltimore in week 1 and the Raiders, get it done. And then you take Baltimore against the Chiefs in week 2 and the Chiefs just came off this remarkable, in my opinion, comeback against the Browns where it looked like the Browns might have had them. And they lose to the Baltimore Ravens who lost to the Raiders. I mean, it's crazy.
It's wild. So what I'll say in regards to that is the way I look at it on the DFS perspective is that there are some teams that are very talented offensively that are lacking on the defensive side, and we need to attack that right now before it's too late. So the teams that I've kind of circled at this point that are just have the good offensive talent but struggle on the defensive side right now. Hey Reggie, how's it going? Is the Chiefs number 1 currently? I think are really trying to figure out what to do defensively, and I think they will figure it out at some point. But right now they're struggling, and they have the offensive talent. Arizona Cardinals fall into that boat as well, I believe. Tennessee Titans fall into that boat as well. And then finally, one that I think is kind of interesting that maybe people won't think about as much is the Atlanta Falcons. I think that they still have the DFS talent to stay close offensively sometimes when their defense is just absolute garbage. And those are the teams that I've kind of circled so far early this year. We'll see if the Lions fall into that boat as well. They currently don't have the offensive talent, in my opinion, but defensively they're terrible as well. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it is right now. What I saw this past week was some teams that have elite offenses and struggle defensively, and then everybody else just kind of falls in the middle where they're either going to be low scoring games and grinding it out type of stuff. Like you can think of the Jaguars as a team that you expect to be able to put up some good DFS numbers solely because they're playing from behind, but I'm not seeing that so far because they just don't have the offense to keep up with anyone. So they're kind of just like really struggling. And then the Broncos yesterday just kept on pounding it on them and just ending that game quickly. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the season so far, is that you got these teams that could fall into these boats. And it's something to keep an eye on as you move forward in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, make sure you're in the live show chat in the Discord if you want to talk and back and forth with us. We'll be checking it out in there. I'm in there right now checking to see. So start talking it up in there. If you got anything you want us to hit on during this show, even though we do have some stuff to talk about, can always put it in there. If we can't talk about it this week, we can always talk about it next week, because I think people love the strategy talk that we gave kind of to start the show last week, and the overview that we gave. And I mean, I just want to keep with that for a second, just to overview before we get into the lineup talk real quick, guys, because we talked about Henry. I mean, everyone understands when 5% on Derrick Henry goes for 50, like, well, when Derrick Henry goes for 50, you need him. Like when you're talking about a milli maker pretty much. And I will say though, like in the big, we'll talk about the difference between the big dog milli and the $20 milli. In the big dog milli, as crazy as this sounds to people, you didn't need Derrick Henry to win. It's that wild, but there were non-Derrick Henry teams that had a shot to win or were winning close to the end. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think in the 20, you needed them. But other things we got right, guys. I mean, you know, Tambo, coming back to you here, you were on that Seattle game as a pivot. You told people about it. What other things did you feel you got right before we get to the wrongs?
Yeah, for sure. And this, I don't even just need a victory lap this. I think it's better to talk from a strategy perspective. And because to me, it's not results oriented. Anyone watch the abundance of content that I did on here and elsewhere last week, this Dallas and Chargers game to me was ridiculous. And if it shot out, then so be it. And you had a big game and there was a shootout, then so be it. But what I was trying to say is, the way people were talking about that game was as if it was the only 60-point total on the slate. It wasn't 60. I'm saying how it was being talked about was like if the afternoon or the whole day was 48 or worse totals and it had a 60. It was not the only game on the slate. It was literally not the only game in the afternoon of the damn slate that could break it. So to me, it had, and I was even saying this, I said after the Wood show, when you guys talked and Big T had the hot take that the ownership would be on Seattle, Tennessee. He said at first more, and then he circled back, which is whatever. I agree with him. He was right that it wasn't going to be as sneaky as you thought, Seattle and Tennessee, but it was a way to be different still, and it was still going to be up there some. And I said the hot take is that even if your contrarian pieces hit in the morning, don't just go jamming in Dallas and Chargers, because I don't even think it's the best game. And sure enough, the afternoon had multiple games and chances to get there. So I think that for me was the biggest thing. The Henry call is just one where I only give myself a half point because I wanted him more in that game environment than I did to take 10, 15% on the entire slate. I basically took him with my Russell Wilson shares. Another spot I got wrong, Metcalf versus Lockett. I'll continue to stand by Metcalf all day, but that was an unfortunate piece going into that one. That kind of sucked. I said that, a few other things last week. I can't really think of all of them, but I just do think the other one was the paying up at running back. I just thought that, again, getting away from the chalk build. And we talk about all this, and it just goes together to the final point of just in general. Hopefully this is, not taken as a victory lap or anything, and just more of a knowing how to read a slate and then being able to get away from the FOMO factor, the fear of missing out. If that Dallas Chargers game went off, it'll be like the ROM situation in PGA last week. If you don't have the bankroll, you're really worried about your money, then do what feels best with your money. Put it on where you feel the safest and are happy to lose your money or get your entertainment value from. If you're like me and you don't care and you just want to run it because you're trying to ship this thing, then I'm going to happily fade that all day. And it would definitely be a different strategy or story if it was the situation I kind of mentioned off the top. And maybe we get that this season. We likely do, to be honest, where there's just one game. You guys remember a couple years ago, the Mexico City game between Kansas City Chiefs and the Rams. Like, we knew that was pushing 80. It ended up going over 100. But that's where, that's a totally different mindset. And that actually might have been a showdown game. I can't remember now. Have a bad memory in that sense. But I would say if we get that scenario, it's a different strategy conversation than what I was saying going into this week. And I'm glad it worked out. It still didn't work out completely on the back end, but hopefully it made some people some money.
Yeah, and K. Fallick, coming right to you here. I mean, talk about some things you got right on the slate, some things you got wrong.
Not much that I got right this week, to be very honest. I went very heavy early. Specifically, I went heavy on this 49ers-Eagles game that I said before. And I truly believe that game would have been very different if the Jalen Reagor touchdown didn't get called back. He had like a 50-yard touchdown catch. There was an ineligible player downfield or something like that. And then the Quez Watkins 90-yard bomb that he got tackled within the 10-yard line.
How'd they not score on that drive, K. Fallon?
It's ridiculous.
What the fuck was that Philly special?
Yeah, it was just I don't understand what the coaches were doing with the offense. To be honest, they were going very heavy. Jalen Hurts runouts and stuff like that, not utilizing all of their receiving options, stuff like that. And I missed. It happens. So I went heavy early. The one thing I did get right was I did not play very much of this as Tambo did, the Chargers versus Cowboys. And the reason I didn't was more because I thought the Cowboys were going to try to go to the run more and try to get Zeke involved. They ended up not only getting Zeke involved, they also got Tony Pollard involved. So that worked out for me in the end, and I almost got into the min cash world if I would have done a few plays that were correct. But yeah, I should have just gone with my regular route, to be honest, of playing these late games that people were going to avoid, just like others did. I think that was the smart play, and hopefully we get some opportunities to do it again later throughout the season, because again, there's still going to be that chalk team that's for some reason chalk, and I think that we can keep on, as I said before, attacking a few teams that I'm just noticing. Like, think about Arizona. Like, what was the big move that Arizona made in the offseason that people aren't talking about? Anybody know? Do y'all know, Tambo or JSU?
Are you going to say AJ Green and JJ Watt?
Please don't say AJ Green.
No, I'm saying that they lost Patrick Patterson.
I mean, that's the thing that no one's talking about, but
I think it's because he was dusty before that, but that's probably why they got rid of him. But I hear what you're saying, and I also you have to earlier on how that changes things for them. Yeah, you got
to replace players with like players, and they had a guy that literally could shut down an entire side of the field, and they don't have that anymore. So it opens up the whole field when you have three pass catchers that are able to attack. Like, listen, JJ Watt has some talent still, causes disruption and stuff like that. But in the end, you still have to have guys that can guard downfield. And Arizona has very clearly shown me, even with just a terrible game by Tennessee, like, they don't have the talent in the defensive backfield to be able to stop them, but they have the offensive talent to keep up with teams potentially. Is kind of how I'm looking at it.
And one thing, I guess, with Arizona is when they're not getting the pass rush, right? It's even worse. Now, when you get a pass rush, it helps the secondary, even if you don't have as much talent, because it speeds everything up. It's going to speed the offense up. It's going to make their timing off. It's going to help your defense. When the pass rush ain't getting there, it becomes a lot harder on the secondary. And I think that's a little more of what we saw yesterday, K. Fallick, than what we saw in week one, where the pass rush was consistently getting there, right? And those are things we're going to have to keep an eye on.
It's listen, as a Texans fan, this is what the Texans did for years and years, is they tried to hold together the backfield by the passing attack. And it was J.J. Watt, it was Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless all playing together. And in the moment that one of them got injured, they were screwed. And that's what ended up happening with the Texans, is that we had no backfield. And y'all can say as much as you want that he was dusty, he was cheeks, whatever you want to say. The answer is, I agree with you that he was not to the level of the price tag that was being paid for him. But in the end, you have to replace him with a player that is going to be of quality enough to be able to hold together the team. And that's what's not happening right now with a lot of these teams, is that they lost some really talented players. I think you'll see it with Tennessee a lot, because they got rid of what's his name, Malcolm Butler. They got rid of all these different defensive backs as well.
Dory Jackson. I don't think they were that good. I don't even think they were that good anyway.
I don't either, but they're better. They're better than the current pieces that they have in their first or second years.
I'm for sure, man. Titles in the chat just killing me because he's going off, and then hearing Fallick say cheeks is just too good. But I do think one thing, though, and you get your guys' opinion on, I think it matters, and it does still talk about DFS strategy, because it's talking like what K Falix said, targeting things. Some of the, it's all about the offense too, and what that means for the other side. When you go out and play the Cardinals, you are going to get pace and you are going to get points.
Correct.
So that's the thing. And as long as you have some sort of talent on the other side, and I'm not going to sit here and big ups Kirk Cousins for his contract or anything, but when he's got Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne looks pretty good. And then don't forget about Jefferson. You've got talent over there and you've got opportunity. And that's what led to that game going the way it did. It's not saying it was going to. No one was on here necessarily saying that's the game of the day. Make sure you get to that one instead. It was just why it was okay to get off of a Dallas Chargers game when there was other games on the slate that could be that. Seattle, Tennessee had some pace, had a chance to go even bigger than it did. You could have got away with just the Henry and Lockett mini stack and then added other pieces around it. But it was just the point. And then even Tampa Bay, Atlanta, it didn't really go there. You had Gronk, who just is continuing on his tour here, another 2 touchdowns and situational stuff like that. But I think it still matters in the sense that there was opportunity. Like I liked the Ridley, Pitts, Ryan stack to get back into the mix there because it's hard to stack the Brady side with so many options that he spreads it to. But if you went the other way, you could get yourself a decent little stack and pick a Mike Evans or a Brown or something and hope for the best. And Evans had a pretty good game, or an okay game at least. I think that's kind of how you got to look at these things going in and why I was okay again with getting off that one game in the afternoon.
Well, now I'm going to go into things I got right, and I'm going to start and things I got wrong. And I'm going to start with what you just talked about, which is Tampa Bay. And, a lot of people will say, oh, it's hard to pick out. I'm telling you, I picked it out. Anyone who watched any of my shows, I told you who was going to score. I didn't say he was going to score 3 times or 2 times. I told you he was going to get in the end zone. I told you they were going to attack Mike Evans' side, whoever, because Terrell and all these guys are terrible. I'm telling you right now, I picked it out. Mike Evans scored multiple times. And honestly, he had, I think, 2 other chances that they just missed on for touchdowns. He could have had 3 or 4, for sure. I know one of them was right before Gronk scored on one of the 2 touchdowns Gronk scored. They went to Evans' side and he just missed. But that was one thing I felt really strong about playing Mike Evans. He was the best receiver on Tampa, and I definitely got that right. Allen Robinson, I think Andy Dalton coming out definitely hurt him because Justin Fields isn't ready. Dude got in the box.
He is so far from ready.
K Fallick, when Andy Dalton went out, I'd never been so upset for Andy Dalton getting hurt in my life. I couldn't believe. My brother was sitting there looking at me. It was just me and him, and he goes, "Why are you even like? Who cares? Andy Dalton sucks." And I'm like, "You don't realize Justin Fields is not ready for this. Like he is just. He did put one throw in the basket of Allen Robinson though, and it went right through his hands." Should have been a second touchdown for Allen Robinson.
Second game for Fields. Like, come on. The best part, though, about
Tambo. He made a few really bad passes.
Well, for sure, but I'm saying we're talking about a guy's second game. You got Zach Wilson over there throwing 4 or 5 interceptions. Like,
all these rookies
Trevor Lawrence.
I'm not saying he's supposed to be. I'm not saying he's supposed to be good. Yeah. That's not my point. My point is he wasn't ready. Like that was my point.
He's not supposed to be ready. I just want to say this about your Andy Dalton thing. The best part about the Andy Dalton injury was he's so worried about losing his job to Fields that he started doing runs and chugging, and he didn't even get hit. And this man's injured because he's trying to keep up.
He tore his own ACL.
He did. Oh, God. One of the things I got wrong, Miles Sanders definitely got that wrong. Now, I don't know what the fuck Philly was doing when it came to goal line plays. Their play calling, when it came down to the goal line, I thought was absolutely horrid. Like, it was just bad. Anyone who watched that game, it was tough. Hurts got him down. Hurts moved the ball a few times pretty good, I thought. And then I thought the drives just stalled because of some bad play calling. Miles Sanders, obviously, didn't get it done. So I definitely got him wrong. And DK Metcalf, who I'm like Tambo, man, I get him wrong again, but that dude, I feel pop committed, Tambo. Do you feel the same way where like you played him
I'm just
already?
Always that way with him. That's why it's disappointing. Yeah. But the worst is on the same day, you nailed the Tampa Bay one, like you said, but it was also a decision for me between Kupp and Woods If I had Cup over Woods at the same exposure and Lockett over Metcalf, those are two of my highest owned guys. Metcalf #1 and Woods was like third or something at almost 20%
If you had those two guys,
exposure.
you were winning.
And I would have had some good line. I might not have won.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that was definitely a differentiator in my profit line for the day.
You want to know the interesting situation is who do you want to guess who they play this upcoming week? Let's first start off with the Rams. Who do they play?
Oh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
They play Buccaneers, so you get to make a tough decision again because that game could explode. And then who do the Vikings or who do the I just told you who do the Seahawks play?
The
Vikings. So you get to make some decisions on them again. You get two defenses two offenses, two games that could potentially explode. Totals are 55 for each of them so far as the first drop with one.
Speaking of the Vikings, I thought one of the things that was apparent was from what I watched in the game, and I haven't rewatched it yet, but I think their offensive line played a lot better in game 2 than it did in game 1. Dalvin Cook looked like he was just running angry the entire game, but that offensive line was moving it for him to run angry, and he looked good behind that line. Now, if that's the line that shows up against Seattle, give me Dalvin Cook. Like, I haven't even looked. You just told me they're playing Seattle, but if they get that type of offensive line, not the week 1 offensive line, I don't want that one. The week 2 Vikings offensive line, if that's the Vikings offensive line that shows up this week, Dalvin Cook will be in some winning lineups. I'll tell you that right now.
So the ownership's going to move on to him because of what Henry just did. And then the week 1 line is going to show up and we're going to have a bad game out of Dalvin Cook. That's what I predict as of right now, if I'm just throwing shit against the wall. But yeah, I hear you for sure.
It could easily be that way. Look at week 1. If you just took week 1, you would have said, this offensive line, they're terrible, because they were terrible. The whole game, they were terrible. I don't know. This is where NFL, week to week, we talk about it. We can't just have biases off of 1 week. I think that's why you need sample. You need an actual sample size of what teams are doing. This is why when I hate going back to this, but I'm just going to say it again. This is why I looked at both games that Tampa Bay played Atlanta last year and what they did against Evans and what Brady did with Evans. And then I looked at what Brady did against the Cowboys, and I said, he's doing the same thing. He's finding the weak links on the field, and he's constantly attacking whoever's on those weak links. That's what they're doing. Most good offenses do that, though. So I think that's where we can find an edge, in DFS, is if we can find the weak links. Obviously we're not coaches, so it's a little harder maybe for us, but still, I know football enough. I feel like we probably know football enough where we can kind of find it. But when you only have 1 week, you can't just have a straight bias like, they're just bad or they're just good, because it's not the case when it's a week by week league. I
want to know one more bias that I think that could be clear for next week. I know we're only we'll talk about reviewing some lineups after this, but I'm very interested to see what people are going to think of TJ Hawkinson next week. The Ravens have now played against Darren Waller and Travis Kelce and have gotten crushed by them. And this week you get another good tight end in TJ Hawkinson for Detroit. So I'm interested to see after his game tonight, depending on how he does tonight, what people are going to prepare for, because you get the bias not the bias, but you get the DraftKings Monday night salary push where the salary's already out. TJ Hawkinson, I don't know what his exact price is, but you get TJ Hawkinson against what is being considered the worst team against tight ends so far this year, but they also played against the top tight ends in the league so far. So
how do you say to yourself, this is where I think, in Tambo, I want to bring you in here. This is where I think people make up their own, like what people do in fantasy, right, is they make up their own biases. They see what they see on the TV, they take the stats, and they'll make their decision on, that's just Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. They're 2 of the best tight ends in the league. But they're 2 of the best tight ends in the league. Or some people will say, this team got eaten up by Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. They're not good against the tight end. I'm going to attack them against the tight end. I think this is where people kind of get a little confused, and the differences, and there are big differences in the two, and you have to kind of create your own narrative to what the stats and what the TV is showing you when you watch the game. And everyone doesn't think of it this way, but like I understand this, like everyone has their own opinion, and the opinion is not the same.
Right. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think it ties in a couple things to what you said previous to that really well, where you said the sample. It's 2 games. Like that's one of the things. I think that's the first part is you kind of got to get some more sample. And that's why I think us as DFS players and just in general, this show will get better as the season goes on, because we can start bringing more things into it, more actual data that makes sense to bring it across and utilize for going forward. The second thing would be is, I don't know, it's tough to say because we are only 2 weeks in. So like the Hawkinson thing is very interesting because I think it depends more early on in the season, the what have you done for me lately? Meaning if Hawkinson goes out and crushes, then that could be a thing where it's just obvious now. Not only did he crush, but those tight ends did well against the Ravens. If he sucks, though, it might go forgotten. And that's where you can pick up the thing and say, well, man, and maybe go back and watch a little bit and say, they're not just getting crushed because of Waller and Kelsey. They're getting crushed because you watch the
Patrick
games.
Queen, because Patrick Queen's one of the worst linebackers in the league and was overdrafted.
Hey now. Take that personally.
No, easy. We got a Ravens fan here. Okay,
no, I hear you. Though. But that's what I'm saying. If you can actually dive in and go that route, that's where I think you actually get more of an advantage because, like JSU said, people are just making up their own biases. And when you put 2 and 2 together, let's say Hawkinson does crush, and then on top of that matchup, he becomes a natural chalk play with the price discounted. Like there's just more reasons that people think it's a must. We just talked about with other scenarios on why those spots aren't always a must, and you need to go to the second layer or the second level to try and dig through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked enough on kind of the overview and all that stuff. I want to get into some of these lineups. Before that, I see a question I just want to answer real quick. And it's from R. Jones 3. He said, playing mostly single entry tournaments. I know it's a personal preference, but do you like to take your core, make a lineup and enter it as your main lineup using the same core, make adjustments and enter new lineups in different single entry contests? So you're adding me. I'm assuming you're asking me what I do. So my core is pretty much just like my main team that I put in mostly all the tournaments that I play for the most part. And then, you know, it's just like you guys do. You would take my core, you plug in the pieces, and then you'd fill it out. Well, it's the same thing. And I put that in all of my main tournaments, whether it be single entry or 3 entry max. I don't really do the thing where it's like, oh, this is a single entry. I got to like build really differently. The only time I would like maybe think about my build more is if I'm playing in like 100-man or 200-man contests where there's way less competitors. But like when I see $100 single entry that is out of, let's say 5,000 people, and then I see a 150 that's out of like 1,500, I'm throwing my main lineup in both of those. Like I know there's a difference in how many people are in the contest, but I still build similar. Now, for a Millie Maker, when there's like 300,000 lineups or whatever it is in the Millie Maker, now it's a little different. I'll still sometimes just throw my main lineup in there too, but it is a different way of building or a different way of thinking about building. And we can talk about that as we review these lineups. But K-Falik, I don't know if you have something to say on this matter. Like, how do you use your core? Do you take your core and then throw it in everything you play? Do you only play it in certain tournaments and play other types of lineups in others? How do you build?
So I think the first thing is that NFL, it's hard to say this is my core and I'm going to play them across the board in all of I'm a 3-team player. I build 3 teams, 3 lineups, and I'm not going to throw the exact same 5 players in all 3 builds. Number one, because you're going to be way overweight on them when you're looking at the number of games that there are. And number 2 is that doesn't mean if I'm building a stack one way, it doesn't mean that I should be building that same exact stack throughout. So I think that that's one of the challenges when you're with providing cores is that you should think of a core as the main pieces of your main lineup in NFL. And there are some plays that are probably smash spot plays that are more of the one-off type of spots. If I were to say, be like Tambo, and I said Derrick Henry is going to smash this week, then there was no chance personally that I was going to be playing heavily that game. I just didn't feel like it, and I would have missed completely. But Derrick Henry would have been a one-off play for me. That would have been across the board or in 2 of my 3 lineups or whatever it means. And then I'm building some teams around it. I felt like Darrell Henderson, for example, was that guy this past week for me. I was playing him in every single lineup, and I was approaching it that way with Darrell Henderson, and I was going to build some stacks around it. So when you look at the core, you're wanting to figure out what are the pieces that are the most critical, but they're a main lineup type of build, and then you should be building differently within them. You shouldn't be having across your entire lineup that you're only allowing yourself 3 choices outside of the 6 that are provided to you. Usually one of those being a defense.
So exactly. That's one of the other good points is we leave out a defense in most of our cores. We don't put defenses in. So you're essentially picking 2 other players in a defense for the most part. One thing that Felix said that I think is perfect for this discussion is, let's say you build 5 to 10 lineups. I don't want you to take my core and plug it into all 10 lineups and then just have 2 spots in a defense to fill out. What I think you should do is take the pieces in the core and you be overweight on those pieces, right? And then you still, have a little differentiation as opposed to just taking the core and playing 5 or 10 lineups with all of them the same core. I think that's the best way to use a core. And that's the way I think of it is I'm just overweight on these guys. I was overweight on Allen Robinson. I was overweight on Mike Evans. I was overweight on CeeDee Lamb. I'm trying to think of who else. Jared Cook. That's how I think of core plays. You should be overweight on those guys because those are some of your favorite plays, right? Javonte Williams. I was overweight on him. That's how I take it. Tambo, how do you use the core? You have a core. How do you use it?
Yeah, I'll get my defenses out of there for next week. I didn't know that was the rule. And I thought the opposite kind of. I look at the way I was doing my cores, just so everyone knows where I'm coming from on that, was that I was basically, you know how much I play. I got 300 lineups plus across both sites. There's single entry ones, there's things like that. But my main lineup, like those Russ Wilson lineups I had, are pretty much 10% of my bankroll just on that lineup. Like if I was in for $5,000 on DraftKings this weekend, I had that lineup for $500. And that's why I was thinking the more I could leave you for players, it's easy for you to go and decide. But I guess defense makes sense because you could just pick a random.
You can play this. There is no rule. That's not what we're saying. There is no rule.
Yeah, I'm saying that's why I thought of it that way. To JSU's point, I wouldn't just take that core and play your 20 lineups with my exact core and just do 3 uniques and run. I would use that in a grouping and say, okay, I'm going to put Tambo group. He's got 6 guys, must use at least 4, and then put some stacking rules on and see what shakes out and see what you like with some of the other biases that you have or things that you like on the week. As far as the rest goes, like you saw how much Russ was in there. He was my highest owned quarterback. I had about 25% across both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings this week on my 300 lineups. And then lastly, I would just say to the original questions point, one thing I do quite often, especially in like a 3-max, I'll do like the lineup. Let's say I had Brady, Godwin, Evans, and ran it back with Ridley, an expensive stack. I might see, and I love my running backs that fit in. I might see if Kyler, Rondale, Hopkins, and KJ Osborne fits because that's 2 cheap wide receivers with the expensive guy like Ridley. You paid up more for the quarterback. You paid down at the other. I might be able to get that same 3-1 game stack for 2 different games if I really love the rest of the build. And then who cares about changing the defense? Just change the defense with as much money as you've got left. So there's my 1 and 2 lineups, and I'm sticking to a pretty hardcore set of my core. And then in the third one, maybe I only take a small piece of both, or maybe I go off the board and say my third one's going to be a game stack of the San Francisco Philly game that K. Fallick, myself, and Hoop all liked yesterday. If you listen to everything, that's sort of where Hoop was at. I was on it. K. Fallick said he was heavy. That was 2 of my 7 quarterbacks were both Garoppolo and Hurts. I really thought that game could get some back and forth, and we lost some pace in that game, and that's what happened. But that's how I would look at building it, JSU, just to be different.
Yeah, and that's where I think the player pool edition that we have on the site, I don't even know if people know. I know I was getting some messages from people after lock, which I appreciate, saying love the player pool edition, love that edition. If you don't know what I'm talking about, on the site, me, Big T, we have an MME player pool type page on the site where you click it and it's positional and by the site, and we list out, like 5 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 8 to 10 receivers, 5 tight ends, 5 defenses. So you can just kind of go in there and add those to your pool as well. And like Tambo's point, you could make a group saying like must have 4 of 6 core plays or something like that. And then add in the pool, the player pool edition from me or Big T or whoever. And then generate some lineups, maybe using the opto or just hand building, say like, okay, these guys, and see what you come up with. I think people look at all the content, but I don't know if they utilize it correctly all the time, the way it should be used. And like, if it was me using our content, I would go into everyone's core, I'd plug in some core plays from a certain person or a couple people, and then look at the player pool and then see who fits. See, okay, this guy likes this X player, let me slide him in there, see what the rest of the lineup looks like, and play with it that way. You know what I mean? Watch the shows and listen to people.
Watch the shows, not to cut you off, but I think I was just about to add that because this is good. It's still part of review process. And obviously anyone watching this is trying to get better at their game and wanting to learn from mistakes, as we all are. We're all trying to learn and get better. Nobody's perfect here. We're just trying to get better and keep improving our game. And this is important. And if you're doing that, so many times I figured that out. Big T or you, JSU, on a baseball show or something where I'm looking at your core and thinking like, I have no clue who the hell these guys are, let alone who they're filling it out with. So what do? I watch the show, I hear a few tidbits here and there, and then I start to make sense of correlation or ownership or something that I can put together to say, okay, this feels right now, and I feel good putting my money behind this and on it. And I've had some really big scores in baseball because of that, which is not one of my better sports, but because of right here at RPS and just listening to the shows versus going to tag you up in the chat. By the way, I see your core. Would you like these 3 guys at the end? Well, you can't exactly tell them who those 3 are. So if you're here, you're doing this anyway and appreciate it, but it's a good reason to listen to more than just this show and get in all of them for the extra info that you need to complete the core.
Tambo, just from someone who's watched our shows before even coming here, right? And now you've been on some shows. Wouldn't you agree with this? And I think you're the perfect person to ask. Kay Fallick could answer this too, but if you watch our shows, I mean, you could build a lineup from just who we talk about. Correct. Like there are no players, like we're not holding back plays. Like, I feel like sometimes I'll get questions like, who do you like? Or what? I promise you guys, if you listen to the shows, now maybe some of you don't because you don't have time, and that's fine. Ask me, I'll tell you who I like. But if you watch the shows, which I know a lot of people do, I promise you, you're going to be able to know who I like by the end of the show. You're going to know who Tambo, Kay Fallick, Big T, everyone here, you're going to know who we like, and you can use that in your building. I don't know if people do that all the time. That's just the truth.
And sometimes find better versions of the cores. I've had nights where I beat Big T with his own core because it's still because of him. He just doesn't know it. He just chose to go this way. And I listened and put in 2 other guys that he didn't, and I ended up beating him in the tournament or something. So it's just little things like that for sure. Kay Fallick.
If you need to play it back later and you're short on time, my suggestion also is one thing that's nice about these shows versus other sites and stuff like that is everything's being done on the YouTube platform. So it also allows you to do some faster playback and stuff like that. Do faster playback for everyone except for Mangone, unless you don't want to listen to Mangone, because you just will not be able to understand him at like faster than the 1x. I sometimes have to slow it down a little bit for him. But 1.5x is a good friend of yours as well if you want to listen to these shows and you're short on time. Listen, I'm short on time. For those that don't know, I am also short on time, even though I'm multitasking often and stuff like that. But I try to catch as many of these shows as I can, and I'm having to play through them fast. For the golf one, like I hate that they do the golf show on Wednesday night. Like I've told this to Big T numerous times. I hate the golf show on Wednesday night because I don't have time to listen to it Wednesday night. So I either have to do it at midnight or I have to do it at like 6 a.m. And I'll put that thing on 1.5x and listen as fast as I can to all the takes that they have and be able to build a lineup before then. So
maybe we'll take your feedback and bump it up a little earlier just for you, K-Phallic.
thank you. Maybe
All
one
right.
day.
Yeah,
Let's do some lineup
there is
reviews,
one
JSU.
person who likes his show nice and late. I'm not going to say his name. He knows who I'm talking about. And we'll end it there. All right. There is one person who loves to have late shows on Wednesdays. Hint, hint. Starts with or ends with a T. But we'll take it under consideration. Uncle T.
Old man Uncle T.
Definitely not Uncle T. All right. I want to get into these lineup builds. And guys, don't forget, you can still ask us questions as we talk about these lineups. You're part of the show too. We want you to interact. So ask us questions. We're going to review some of the Millie making winning lineups from, I think, both the $20 and the 444. And Tambo, why don't we start with the bigger dollar one? So then we can talk about the differences from the 444 to the 20. How about that?
Yeah, I think the 4444, for those that don't know, it's the Mega Millie. It was 881 entries. It's $1 million to first still. It's it's a nice payout structure. Actually, it was 300 to say nice in its own sense. When we get to the $20, our guy John Galt JD will tell you about payout structures. But this one here is still 300 to second, 200 to third, 150, and you still get 100 for fifth. Obviously, you've got to have the bigger bankroll or the bigger buy-in to get in, but don't forget those satellites. I know K-Phallic talks about them all the time.
Tambo, rich parents. That's all you need.
Rich parents. That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
Let me say that the rich parents did not take care of everyone well this week, because I saw a tweet from that got shared by our boy Bruce Hines. Let's see, it says all 10 of the top NFL players per Roto Grinders participated, entering 137 lineups, $609,000, hitting on 28 and generating a total net loss of $318,000 this week.
Bad day for the rich parents. You hate to see it. All right, Tambo, get back.
No, it's all good. I think that's perfect. Like, you look at it, that's kind of where you break it down. But the one thing about this tournament, and I've struggled with this in the past, got, I think, a little bit better at it over the last year. And surprisingly in baseball, like that $2,500 mega where Hoop came fifth and I came eighth. I only had 3 entries. I got all 3 of them from a $75 winner take all satellite, or I wouldn't even have had a single entry in it. I trust the content here. I trust the cores and the people. But I don't want to play $2,500 in a sport I don't feel 100% comfortable in unless I can get in the easy way, which was the tickets. And there was nights I saw JSU steal the tickets, and Pensac and K-Phallic and everyone getting these tickets this way, because you guys have talked about it here. Another reason to watch the shows, the little hints and tidbits of ways to get in. And I tried to get into this one. I got a second and a third to get a ticket to this one. So I did not get in. But one of the biggest things about the higher dollar buy-in, lower field, is I think just people, especially for a first time getting in with one entry, I think they get too cute. They overthink it. They think you need all this galaxy brain stuff. They start trying to build, well, maybe Teddy Bridgewater to KJ Hamler, and this makes sense and that. And I'm not hating on that play or that stack. I'm just giving an example when realistically you can still kind of get there. And just to give you guys an idea, 185.32, it was Kenny Z816 took it down with 185.32. Of note, the winner of the $20 was over 233 points. Might have been 234. We'll get there in a second. But here's the lineup. It's Justin Herbert to Austin Eckler to Jared Cook. No Dallas run back. Derrick Henry, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson. So 2 of the receivers from the Rams with no Stafford. Just to give you an idea of this stuff, just peppering them with targets. KJ Osborne, Calvin Ridley in the flex, which is interesting. I think I like that play. People putting wide receiver in the flex versus a running back, because someone like Ridley who could really bounce back. Definitely like that. And then the Cleveland Browns defense to round it out. So, I mean, the thing for me that I see right away is, while there is correlation, it's in the sense it's a little bit different than how you would normally expect to see it, or what you would maybe say is, the norm, if you will. So JSU, any thoughts on that? I see you nodding your head there.
Yeah. So one thing that he did that you hit on was, obviously the stack with Herbert. You're talking about not the norm. Like he used Eckler, who, you can say, okay, most people don't throw the quarterback with the running back. Now, Eckler is maybe a little different just from the standpoint he is known to be a receiving back, and they have kind of quoted like with Lombardi there, maybe the Kamara type role. So Eckler was getting a lot of pump before the year, having a big role in this offense. Obviously had a pretty good game, solid game. And Herbert didn't throw that many touchdowns to other receivers. So this really worked. Now the Jared Cook thing, you could say Jared Cook maybe ran a little bad. That touchdown that he had that got called back, I think it was like an illegal shift or something like that. That kind of stuff. But this build, what he did, I think, so the keys were he had Kupp and Henry, which I obviously those being the two highest scoring guys at each position. Also, he had Osborne, who was 1%. The rest of the lineup, though, this is where the higher dollar stuff, you can sometimes have these type of lineups where you have all of like the guys that go off in each range. He had the low price guy go off. He had the studs go off, right? The mid-tier guy go off. You can have a few duds in these. And this is where people are like, oh, well, it's easier to win. It's still not easier to win. I'm sorry. You're playing the best guys in the world, and you're playing the best guys in the world, and they're playing multiple lineups. So it's not like you're playing 831 of the best players in the world or whatever it is. No, you're playing the best players that are playing like friggin' 10 lineups, 12 lineups, whatever the max is. Some of these guys are maximum.
Can I stop you for a second? Because I personally believe it is easier to win, but it is also a lot easier to lose, and your bankroll cannot handle it.
So how is it easier to win if it's easier to lose?
I'm saying it's easier to lose money faster is what I mean.
Right. But that's why, though, when people tell me it's quote unquote easier, I say, well, okay, it might be easier to win, but it's also easier to lose your entire bankroll.
Correct. I think
and not be able to play DFS because your wife's yelling at you, or your bank account is at zero, like whatever it is. That's my point, is people get it kind of confused. So I'm glad we kind of clarified that. Good point. But this is where you can have a few duds. He had Van Jefferson at 2. Cook only got 5, but it was the tight end position. No tight ends really went off. So, the lineup itself was okay. But I was telling you guys, I liked the third place lineup better than I did the first place lineup. I thought it was a better overall build. There was just one thing he didn't have, and it was Derrick Henry, which is that's just crazy to me that he was in the top 3 with no Henry. But K-Falk, what do you think of this lineup?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is he got both unlucky and lucky in this Dallas Chargers game. The reason he got lucky is because the Dallas game, the players that did well were low owned. So he was able to get the low owned, he was able to avoid the Dallas guy run back, and the game didn't explode too much either. And I think that was the piece, is that Dallas didn't have a bad DFS day across the board. It was just some low-owned pieces that did well, so he was able to avoid that issue. So the run back and the stacking type of situation worked out for him by going only one-sided. And I 100% agree with you on the listen. He had 3 players that he played that won him $1 million. He won $1 million and now can go buy 3 jerseys, and that's it. He goes and buys a Derrick Henry jersey. He buys a Cooper Kupp jersey, and he goes and buys a KJ Osborne jersey. He doesn't have to spend.
I don't know if he can buy it. He might have to make one, but I mean, you're right. Yeah, custom.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it was, because he was able to avoid the landmines that were the Dallas Cowboys players for the most part. Was the thing. So now we're looking at the third place team, and as was said, there's a lot. I think it's a completely different squad, and looks so different, and there's so much interest in some of these plays. Najee Harris had control of the ball. They were playing him for a reason. You're playing Damian Harris. Damian Harris should have done so much more, but for some reason right now they're giving it to old man James White to see what he has in these first few games or something. And James White looks good. I'm not going to lie. He looks pretty good so far this year. So there is that as well. I don't know if y'all have any more thoughts on this third place team, but those are the first initial thoughts that I have, is that he's playing a much more balanced lineup with a 2 tight end lineup, which I think is interesting as well.
Yeah, these are especially the third place lineup, even the first place, like I said, it just reminds me more of like a season long vibe where you're just trying to rack up the raw points to almost win a matchup where it may end up getting you to the top and winning you $1 million. Like even this lineup, yes, you've got Herbert to Mike Williams, leaving alone the rest of the game. I understand the game theory behind it, and that would make sense. Just get the couple pieces you like, go different, and that allows you to now put in a guy like Harris who has some ownership, but then you get back with Rondale Moore. You use 2 lower end pieces down at the bottom by going 2 tight ends. You're just naturally unique. There's not really a bad play in the lineup per se, if you were thinking early thoughts going in or anything like that. But I also should note, third place lineup, Bounce House, very, very rich parents. Max entered for 115,000, wins 200, doesn't even come away with 100K profit. So he's probably disappointed in that result, but the build was, to me, like you said, a little bit stronger and being able to take on some more risk, like the 2 tight end set. If you treat Waller like he is a wide receiver 1, then it's not really that. It's just he set it up properly as well, because you put the guy latest in your flex, which becomes Gronk. But if you think about it as a more traditional lineup, where I'm saying like almost like a season long, you don't get 2 tight end slots, but you could do it with the flex. And Waller is really like a wide receiver 1. So that's why I like it better. I'm with you there, JSU. I had some chances to get there, just didn't quite have all the pieces. Third place, though, still pretty solid.
So one thing I want to talk about, because someone brought it up to me last week and we couldn't get to it, but I think it's interesting. And I haven't even seen the $20 winner. I didn't look at the lineup yet. We're going to show it in a second on the screen. But last week, I'm pretty sure the winners of the Millies didn't run it back with their stack. I don't know if you guys can 100% confirm, but this lineup right here, both these teams, well, Herbert, Eckler, Cup, there's no run back. And one thing I want to say is, or I want to phrase it as a question because I want you guys to answer it. Is it that we're all so trained now because DFS has been around now for a little while? In NFL DFS, we all know everyone is listening to content. They're listening to all the free podcasts. And everyone's kind of saying a lot of similar stuff when it comes to like, hey, listen, stacking and playing a quarterback with 2 pass catchers and a run back on the other side. Are we getting to a point now where it's almost a good idea to differentiate by not doing the norm of the quarterback plus 2 receiver or 2 pass catchers plus a run back type of stack? Like, what do you guys think about that? Because someone asked me that question. I think it's interesting to talk about. K-Fallon?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have 8 slots for players. So I think that's always important to remember, is that you have 8 slots for players and you have 24, usually 24 potential teams or 26 potential teams to choose from. So it doesn't always mean that like a stack is going to win every single time, but it allows you to have a potential edge because you're hoping that a game gets out of control and goes crazy. I'm sure that these same people could have put a person in place of like you could have, as was being discussed with the Seattle game, you could have done it where it would have worked out. I'm sure if you put Derrick Henry, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and probably even added like a Chris Carson or something like that. I don't know who the other piece would have been, but you probably could have put a stack together and replaced all those players accordingly. So I would say that the answer is a yes and no. By putting a stack together, you are creating a script that you are hoping that will create the points. But the other side is that these players some are very badly mispriced. Some of them are priced correctly. Some of them have edges potentially, and you only have 8 slots to fill. And if you're filling 3 or 4 of them with the same stack, you're avoiding now at least 8 games and 20 teams at least when you're building that way. So there's that side of it as well.
Yeah, Tambo, what do you think about this? Do you think that there's anything to this maybe being contrarian by stacking, but maybe doing it a little differently, not running it back?
I think it's pure luck. I think I'm
Okay.
still going to build the same way because I want less situations to have to happen for me to win. I'll give you an example. It's a good segue to the $20. If we can pull up Topher 10-1072 won the Millie. He also did not bring it back. He ran Brady, he ran Fournette, and he ran Gronk. I don't see any ATL in there, but it's just little things where, if you change around the setup a little bit. I'm trying to think right off the top what you could do, like little things that you can do within the build. I think he left $200 on the table. There was definitely something there that he could have done between the Fournette, the Cardinals, and Jones that could have still made it a spot where you run it back the other way and make this lineup, in a sense, better or stacked for less things needing to happen. And that's where I'm doing it. Like, the reason to stack is not just because of the obvious, if three guys go off for one side, now they should be passing, because we've seen it. The other one was what? It was Brady, Fournette, and Gronk. Like, no one would think of that stack without a run it back, but you could still find a way that you could make it work. So I'm going to make my lineups for less things needing to go right. That's the problem why I say in like the 44-44, when they get there, but it's like a season long where they might only have like a quarterback, receiver, and then a bunch of good value plays, but those value plays all hit and everyone else got too cute or went too far off the board. That cancels out 20% of lineups. The other ones didn't get on the right game stacks or whatever it might be to try and really take over with less things needing to happen. That cancels out 20%. You just start leveling up that way. I'm always going to build with correlation. And I think the run it back is a fine way to do it. And if you look over the huge sample sizes of data, it is the way to go in a sense. It's just, again, you got to be careful of how you're doing it and be very, particular with your rules in something like the optimizer when you're building something that makes sense.
Tambo, the run back was very easy. It's very easy to build this winner, and I can't believe that I missed it. It's putting Cordero Patterson in as the flex, and then putting Tampa Bay defense in as your defense.
I mean, I can't believe you didn't.
Money.
I can't believe you didn't. I'm going to give someone credit though. I don't know who this person was. I want to actually find it. There was one RPS person who posted in our Discord.
Someone posted Cordero Patterson.
Played Cordero Patterson and won 4K. And I don't know what the tournament was that he won 4K. I don't know if it was the Millie Maker. I don't know what it was, but the lineup he posted, he came in 7th. He scored 205. K-Falik, what was the Millie Maker? I'm sorry, Tambo, what was the Millie Maker winner?
233, 34.
Okay, so he probably wasn't in the Millie Maker because he got 205. But this team, he played Matt Ryan, Calvin, Ezekiel Elliott, Javonte Williams, Calvin Ridley, Mike Evans, Cordero Patterson, Gronk, Derrick Henry, and the Bears D. That's a pretty friggin' good team. I don't know how the hell he got on Cordero Patterson, though, because I would never have played Cordero Patterson. So he must be an Atlanta fan, or I don't know. Whatever. All I'm saying is I don't know how he got on Cordero Patterson, but that.
You guys know how many Ridley scored yesterday? DK points?
Yeah, 19. 19.30. So
19.30. This was going to be my point. Is like, it's pretty close. All I'm trying to say is how it could still go your way. So $300 more to go from Lockett. You lose 15 points. You get dropped down from the Cardinals to something like the Vikings, and it's only a difference of 11. Like that, I know it wouldn't have won the Millie because that's the 3 points that matter. But I'm just trying to say, like, it wasn't like Ridley had his best game either. So not correlating it in this case technically worked. You got on the perfect combo, but I'm just saying there was definitely ways you could go about it and still end up with this being a correlated lineup and having even more than 233.
Well, the answer would have been playing Mike Evans instead of Lockett, finding a way to get either Ridley or somehow deciding that Cordero Patterson, and then you pay up for another running back if they're Dalvin Cook or something like that.
Yeah, I had the nuts with his lineup when I realized it was stacked with Brady. It's if you go Fournette up to Zeke for 1,100, you get enough to have a piece of that game. You drop Marvin Jones down to KJ Osborne as a mini stack with Rondale Moore, and it leaves you enough to go from the Cardinals to the Bills, who smashed, and then he's got points for days in all of those positions and ships it by like 50, but then there still is no run back. That was the original point.
Yeah.
And why I said just using the Lockett for a guy like Cordero Patterson was 0.6%. most people would run this back with Ridley. It's $300 more to go to Ridley. Then you drop down from someone else and you still have the money. Like, it's just an example where you can find spots to make
Ridley or Kyle Pitts were the obvious run backs in that game.
Right. Yeah. So if you played anyone other than those guys, obviously you're going to be different. But most people who played that game were playing those two. Do you want to show the guy who came in third, Tambo? Because I think he's a member, correct?
He is. He was in the chat earlier. That's the guy. I said John Galt, John G. The G stands for GOAT. Took it down, got third. I know it's disappointing, and it's not a mini or it's not even a humble brag. I've got third in a Millie Maker before when it was 40,000, and there's nothing worse, especially when you're that close and at the end. So I know the literal exact feeling. Having a chance, the ball goes through. It was a Russell Wilson lineup. He could have caught the ball. It was back in the Russell Wilson Jimmy G days, and he dropped a pass worth 100K, the second prize, and then he dropped a touchdown, which was worth the whole millie. So I know about these pay drops, but 6 figures, man, you should be very proud. That's huge. It's $100,000, allows you to stay in the streets for much longer, to continue to get after it, to go after some of these satellites, to try and get into the bigger ones and just parlay it that way. It goes good if you keep sticking with it. So his lineup was nice. It was very nice. It was Kyler Murray going to Rondale Moore. And again, we talked about this, but he's got a nice run it back with KJ Osborne. So we just talked about this exact scenario. And then it was nice after that. He had Henry, he had Henderson, who actually could have done even better. He got injured. He had Cortland Sutton, who many overlooked. He was 2.8%. Rob Gronkowski at the tight end. Mike Williams as the unique piece in that game just to get a piece of it. And the Rams D paid up for it to go with Henderson because the savings he had elsewhere. And I really like this build quite a bit. I think it was the best build of all the ones we discussed. And it's not even an RPS bias. I just think if you look at it, it is the nicest build that we looked at.
Let me tell you right now, there were points, John, this lineup's a hell of a lineup. And my God, Cortland Sutton, he could have had even more points than what he put up.
Well, yeah.
If you watch that game, I'm sorry if you watch that game. Hopefully you didn't watch that game, John, because I know you look at it and most people look at it and say he was 2%. He was 5.2K. He got 27. I mean, the dude balled. I'm not saying he didn't do that. All I'm saying is there were a few big plays that Cortland Sutton just missed on with Teddy Bridgewater, and they could have resulted for a monster day from Cortland Sutton.
And all I'm saying is that he was the highest Darrell Henderson at 6%, and the ghost of Sony Michel came in and ran it like a boss after that. Those are all Henderson's yards.
That has to hurt. That has to hurt your feelings more than anything else. Is Henderson getting hurt as early as he did when he was just
with 53 yards already, and they were just rolling him. He looked so good. So I get it. It's one of those things. But again, the crazy part is he had no Cooper Kupp. So we talked earlier about the other side where the guy didn't need to have Derrick Henry. The winner had Henry, Moore, Kupp, Gronk, had a bunch of the same guys that he had, but his injury was costly. And then that also affected the leverage spot, right? He had the one up on Cooper Kupp and it didn't work out because Cooper Kupp kept getting targeted thereafter, because when you're down a guy that was playing well for you, it's the only other thing you can do. So again, John, don't take it the wrong way. You absolutely destroyed. We're happy and proud of you, but I know it feels tough when you were right there, but still $100,000, man. Congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah, for real. It is crazy when you think $20 million, you need Kupp. No, you didn't. You didn't. You think you did, but you didn't actually need him on this slate to win. You look at his lineup and you would say, he needed Kupp. Nope, that's not the correct way to look at it. He had the lineup that had a shot to win. It just missed because of a few things. And I think the Darrell Henderson point may be even better than the Cortland Sutton point, because those are ball in belly touches that could have resulted, whereas Cortland Sutton still had to make some of these plays that he got an opportunity to make, but it's a little different than ball in belly. And with leverage too, with a 6% RAM versus a 20% RAM, who resulted in that thereafter because there was even more opportunity for him when the running back goes down. So either way, again, incredible lineup. Literally, like I said, I'm not just saying this. It was the best we reviewed by far from a process standpoint.
and just the overall correlation and the way it was built out, very strong lineup, and the way you take this thing down. So you'll get there again, I'm sure. That's a great start.
But this is where the correlation question comes back, is like this lineup is almost fully correlated. And that's where I think that the answer is that he could have he came up with a fully correlated lineup that should, in my opinion, have won the $1 million if he didn't have one unlucky injury. Like, it was a clear $1 million lineup, and it's fully correlated across the board, except for playing a touchdown dependent tight end, and he got his touchdowns, and then playing what would have been expected to be a really good spot with these Chargers. He played Mike Williams, and then he played a guy who took over for an injured guy. Jerry Jeudy's out. We all missed, I feel as if it was a miss on my end that I did not consider Courtland Sutton, and I was considering Tim Patrick or KJ Hamler more than, and Noah Fant was being discussed when Courtland Sutton was the answer, and we just missed it.
Yeah. I will say one thing to that. It goes with the strategy piece, just sort of round it out, I guess, is that I talked about this last week. Anyone who watched the week 1 show, and then just another note on this show and why I love it so much, to K Fallick's point, you can't catch them all, but this is evergreen content. I don't care that it's about week 2. Most of the stuff that we're talking about this show is evergreen content, meaning you can utilize these thoughts and processes for what you're doing next week, the week after. You can go back and listen to these at any time. That's why I love doing shows like this. And what I will say, if you watch the week 1 show, JSU, K Fallick, I brought this up. I said, I think I actually over-correlated in my lineup and in some more of my lineups. And so I went away from that last week some, and meaning in this lineup, he went Murray, Moore, Osborne. For sure, that's a 2-1. Yes, he did the running back with the D, but I'm okay with that. I think what it was with me, I had Derrick Henry across from a Seattle guy in the same example using this type of lineup. He didn't go with that. He said, look, I'm going to get my quarterback, receiver, run back. I'm going to get a running back with the D. No one's paying up a D. That makes sense to me. And then I'm going to see what the pieces that fit make sense with. And if you look at it, it really does make a lot of sense. Derrick Henry, who we all liked here, JSU, myself at least, for low ownership. He's a member. Maybe that's why. Courtland Sutton, you nailed it. The injury. Everyone's on either going with the Javonte Williams. I know JSU and I both liked him. Fant, I thought was a great play. Hamler or Patrick, overlooked it. That's a mistake on my part. I think that's a good call. And then you just round out with a couple guys. Gronk and Mike Williams are 2 guys that are heavily involved. One had 2 touchdowns the first week and added 2 more. The other guy was, I think, 8 for 92 and a touchdown in week 1, and now goes for 791 and a touchdown, just getting used heavily. So it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It's not just the result we're looking at here. It's how it was put together that led to the result. And that's what I think is so important when we do these review shows.
Yeah, for sure. And I do, just because this guy sent us this screenshot early this morning, I do want to get to one more shot. I think I sent it to you guys in our group chat. He had a good lineup, put up 170. He said he played it in a few GPPs, Millie Maker, all that stuff. Justin Herbert, Derrick Henry, Zeke, Mike Williams, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Noah Fant, Jalen Guyton in the Arizona D. So he played 4 wide receivers. He obviously went with the double stack with Guyton and Mike Williams. He had Mike Evans at under 10%, Zeke, and I know, Tambo, you were talking about it, and I was talking about it, just maybe playing the running backs in that game to be a little different than just complete passing game, but he did play CD as well. He went all in on the Chargers game and pretty much got on. Honestly, the lineup is really good. He kind of got unlucky going all in, but he still put up 170 and he made money. I don't want to say he got unlucky, but the build, in my opinion, was pretty good. Now, does he need to take the shot on Guyton? I mean, yeah, I like, if you're stacking that game, I don't hate it. He got 4, but there could have been more points for him. Obviously, the over was a big thing. People were talking about the game. I think it was a pretty solid build. What do you think, K-Fella?
Yeah, I think it's a solid build. The only, I personally, in the way I build, and again, I only play 3 lineups, so it's just my personal preference. There's not going to be a usual situation where I'll play 5 from the same game. It's just not. I think that you're limiting yourself to the opportunity that is available in other spots when you play 5 guys from the same game. Specifically when you're playing Zeke and CD together. I just don't currently with how Dallas played in their first game. I didn't see where Zeke was the run back option necessarily for that. So what you're depending on is just, I guess, similar to what Seattle and Tennessee do. The thing is that Dallas doesn't trust Zeke to be the Derrick Henry type of running back right now, where they're going to feed it to him when they're down 14. So you're hoping for a similar script to that, though. So personally, 5 from one game is not going to be a route that I probably ever will go unless it's just an absolute smash spot type of situation.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. I think a lot of people thought this was the absolute smash spot situation. And I think what he was trying to do was he knew that everyone was wanted the pass catchers, right? And, he had the pass catchers from one side with the Justin Herbert staff, and he had CD. And I think he was like, okay, if I think this game is going to go over, which a lot of people thought, it wasn't just him, a lot of people thought this game was going to go nuts, then he wanted to get as many points from this game as possible. And that's kind of where Zeke came in. He probably said, I'd rather play Zeke at a little lower ownership than play Cooper and Lamb together, knowing that ownership was just going to be crazy. Because he probably could have made it work where he found a way to play Cooper and Lamb. He chose to go the running back route. I mean, I don't know. I think it's okay. I don't play 5. I agree with Keith out that I don't play 5 from one game a lot. But when you see a game that you just think is the complete nuts, I don't have a problem with it if you think it's just going to go crazy scoring. Tambo, what do you think?
The build was okay. What I'll say about this, I'm okay with the 5-man stack. It's not that. This is literally making my point of what I tried to talk about on the content on the site last week. Give 2 more touchdowns to Guyton in this exact game and give 1 more to Zeke, because Zeke had the little lateral that didn't go in. Pollard gave it, and I'm even giving 2 to Guyton. There's no reason to. That's 4 more touchdowns between the quarterback and Guyton, 1 more to Zeke. You don't even sniff 230. And I'm giving you all these extra free points in this game that everybody's on. So even though you had unique pieces at under 10%, that you needed to be like 100 lineups of this all in and hope that you got the magical Henry, Kupp, Rondale Moore, KJ Osborne somehow fit into it somewhere randomly, because all these 20s weren't going to get you there. So everyone said, well, what if the game did what it was supposed to do? I'm saying no. I'm saying give your 2% guy 2 more touchdowns, which gives 2 more to Herbert, which gives 1 more to Zeke the other way just for bad, whatever, variance. And you still just sniff 200, 210, 205. Like, it was so hard to get there on this game. You needed way off the board pieces that then forced other pieces in there. And that does go a little bit with what K. Fallick's saying about the 5-man of, this. I don't know. It kind of ties in with it, if you get what I'm trying to say, because you were always going to be forced into a corner of many 3v3s and 4v4s, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually not in a tournament with 233,000 people on a slate this big. It doesn't matter how different you got at certain positions. That's why I didn't like this game and was okay going with neither of these quarterbacks. Besides, I think this is a really good lineup for like 100-man. Like I said, if you want to get a hedge in, throw it in 100-man. This could dominate, because 200 points in 100-man would have shipped every King of the Beach satellite yesterday. That's where I'm okay with something like that. Trying to do it in 233K tournament of entrants, you are putting yourself boxed into a corner of just needing way too many things to go your way. You already need to be almost perfect. So that's where I have the challenge. The build is fine. I think structurally it looks great. I just am explaining why that was my point originally and why it makes it tougher on a slate this big with that many opportunities across different games.
This is my point exactly when it comes to the $20, the $3, when there's hundreds of thousands of entries. This is where I'll think about playing different builds in those type of tournaments. Because like Tambo said, if you play a ton of Cowboys Charger stacks, you're fighting a lot of combos. A lot of people who just said, I'm just going to lock this game in. I'm going to stack it every which way to Sunday. And you're fighting all those guys, right, Tambo? He
still needed, like I said, when he gets it all right, he needs Lockett over Evans. He needs Rondale Moore in there. Or he needs Gronk in for Fant instead of Evans being in as a Tampa Bay guy. He needs to probably get off CD and go to Rondale Moore and then bump the defense. And someone has that combo on you. So you're in trouble when you have, even if I give you 6 free touchdowns in this lineup, you don't sniff the winner yesterday if all else stays the same. And it's whatever. You people watch this probably, well, if I get it. I'm just trying to explain. It's not a victory lap. It's not that. It's why the original theory of this whole show was about when that situation occurs. Now, if this, back to my original point, Jesse, and I'll leave it at this, if this had been the slate where Dallas and Chargers was the only nut game on the slate, and there was no other 55-point totals at all, then I think he built this extremely unique to where he had enough positional difference with ownership where there's a lot of low-owned guys that he wouldn't have had to contend with as many of those other situations and spots. That's kind of the grand scheme point that I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, and just to because I know K Alex got to head out in a minute, and we're gonna wrap this show up. Our boy Titletown sent us a lineup, and he said you just got to talk about it on the show for a second. So he went pretty much a Brady stack with Brady, Godwin, Evans. He had Najee and Eckler as his 2 running backs. With Robert Woods instead of Cooper Kupp, he went Kyle Pitts, Cedric Wilson, and the Bears D. Tambo, this is one of those lineups where he had the correlation with Brady and the 2 wide receivers, and then he brought it back with the tight end, but he didn't, Woods over Kupp, which was something that I think you were talking about you needed, right?
Yeah.
He put up 160 in this lineup. There were points to be had. Still, it's a good lineup, solid lineup. I think like you said, playing in a few 100-man tournament, you're going to cash, no problem. But what do you think of this lineup real quick?
Yeah, I think it's a great lineup. We talked, if you think about just the strategy of what he put it in, he came in 24th with this, with only 160 points. I'm not sure what tournament, if he told you what it was, but at the end of the day, he built it accordingly. And if you look at it, I love the secondary correlation that he's got with Eckler and Wilson. So it's 2 lower owned pieces in that game without going all in and just setting it up for a completely different script. The running back does the work for the Chargers. Wilson just does enough at his price tag to run it back with. Obviously, the 3-1 stack makes sense using the Brady, Godwin, Evans, and the run it back with Pitts. I love all that. The flop lag on Pitts, using Woods as the lower owned of the Kupp. I really do think the build is strong, and he did enough different with Pitts, Woods, Cedric Wilson, Bears D, where he could still get Najee Harrison and not have to worry about it. I'm not just big up in Title. I love Title, but this is just a good build, and especially for the tournament selection. So that's really what matters most to me about this, more than did he build it right or is it exactly correct to what everyone says you should build like. It's more about he knew what tournament he was in and he played to that tournament. It also to the last point there, JSU, was that it's the Tampa Bay Atlanta game instead of the Seattle Tennessee and the Chargers Dallas. So he went the level to the level. He didn't just move off to what like Big T's point was, where he thought Seattle Tennessee was still getting popular, and it was. So that left him without our guy Henry. He's got to trust us on Derrick Henry next time to ship that bad boy.
Yep.
But still a very nice build, and I like how he did it. He set it up perfect. I really do like the build overall.
This is where Title, like you said, knew exactly what he was playing. I thought he made some good pivots. We can all talk about, Kupp smashed. I understand it. The Woods to Kupp pairing, when you look at the ownership and all that, I understand why people went Woods over Kupp. Obviously it didn't work out, but there was a big difference in ownership. And just say things were roles reversed, and Woods outscored Kupp, this lineup gets even way better. So from a kind of standpoint where he was just thinking outside of the box or trying to in a game that he knew was going to get some ownership, not the ownership of the Cowboys game though. And it still had a pretty high total. It's still, he played a good offense with good players. I really like the build from Title, but like you said, the running backs, maybe he could have done something a little different instead of just played old Najee, which I get he was fine and good, but that might have been where he could have got a little more of a jump, as we would say, right, Tambo?
Yeah, if he wanted to stick with the theme of the flop lag like he did, he could have kept his same stack, which I think was fine, by the way. Godwin and Evans, some will say, like, can you play them both together? They're not. because it's so price prohibited on a guy like Metcalf and Lockett, and we also typically see them go seesaw back and forth. It was definitely fine here. I think there was no issue with that. Brady was under 7K. They were both under 7K. He could have went off Woods and went down to like Rondale Moore if you wanted to stick with that. And then he would have had the money to get off of Eckler maybe and go up to a guy like Henry. There's just different things you can look at after the fact. But if the secondary stack was what he was going after, it made perfect sense. And I really like the fact that he still said, look, I'm not going to abandon this game completely. I'm going to play it from a different script, go small with just the mini stack and secondary stack, and use two of the lower owned pieces that actually still make a lot of sense from the alternate game script possibility. Whereas Eckler goes off and they need to use with no Gallup, use Wilson on the way back. So I still love the lineup. I think it's made fine. This is just part of variance in the results, the way they shake out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we can't control. And again, we can look at it and we can go through it and talk about it a little bit and say, oh, we could have done X, Y, Z. Obviously, it's after the fact, though, but we're just saying the thought process is what's good. I think he had a good thought process to this lineup and the way he built this lineup. And, it executed to a certain standpoint, right? And for what he was playing, 550 people, he said, $200 single entry. I think it's a really solid build, and he did a good job.
Get me on a show with title, Jess. You make the schedule. Find me a show with title. I've been trying to get on with this guy, man. This guy's the man. And we know he's going to wax Big T in round 2. I got all the time. I want all the money on title. I want to get on a show with title.
You want to get on title? Oh boy. You don't believe in the Big T revenge? You don't believe in the revenge?
And I would definitely take title against you too if I thought that's where you were going there.
Oh,
and I know
baby.
what you got. I know you're okay, but I'm still in on title. Buddy was stroking it like, man, JJ Redick back in the day or something. I didn't even know who he was in that point. It came up on a Periscope.
He don't want guys that actually run around with them and not be dying for water after 2 minutes.
I think that was his only mistake. I know he still thinks to this day it's to his advantage. But man, it was just because of his shots dialed. He's never gonna miss. But imagine if he had been allowed to run on Big T. Big T was already dead from just guarding 3-pointers.
Yeah, I think that game, either way, Tambo, title was winning. It didn't matter.
I know so.
It didn't matter the rules. Tony was shot. He was shot. He'll even tell you he was shot. He just couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. I remember him telling me, he said every time after I would like make a move to the hoop, he'd expend all this energy. He's like, I had nothing left. It was like my gas tank was gone after one move, and he would just throw up a shot. It would airball or clank.
Eventually, he was just hucking him up like that. I think I remember he had to take a timeout, and Mangone had to bring him a water bottle. All kinds of stuff on the side.
I mean, if I was Tony and I knew I was in that bet, I would have made sure it would have been like, I have unlimited timeouts, like something to help you. Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I thought title was a ringer. I said, who'd they get this guy in from some college team? Shooting threes over him, just like it was buckets every time. It felt like everyone was going in.
Definitely good. Title was definitely better than Tony thought, better than I thought. He was definitely good.
I'm good on my RPS bets. I got the Uncle T over Rubio in golf the other day too. So
that was easy.
Running these bets up.
That was easy money though. Uncle T over Rubio. That's not title versus JSU. That's not title versus JSU though.
I would still take it.
What's the line? What's the line set? What's the line set? What's it at? What's the line?
Didn't Big T get even? What was the Big T number with them?
Big T. No, it was even with Big T. Might have been. Big T was the favorite, I think.
So Big T took him on as a favorite, and you want a line against him?
What's the line? You're telling me that I get destroyed, and he's saying it's easier. I don't know. What do you say?
Like, I don't know. Title lets you start 3-0, but he gets the ball.
I mean,
that's about what I would say. And then I bet you he still
Title wouldn't do that because he's sharp. I'll give Title one thing. The dude is sharp. He knows like exactly what he wants when it comes to betting. He knows what he will bet and what he won't bet. He's like my brother. My little brother's the same way. Everything needs to be in his favor. And he needs to know it too. He needs to know, like, it's just his rules, his way. He knows it too. That I'm telling you right now, title is sharp this way. He knows it.
That's called running your ship, man. If you get everything the way it's supposed to be and get it lined up, that's part of the plan.
All I'm going to say is he can talk about shooting over a chair. The chair's going to punch back. He don't want none of the chair punching back. That's all I'm going to say.
Is it a chair or is it a Bar Island stool?
Finesse. Title can't go left either. He literally couldn't use his left hand.
Jeez, now that's a
I'll
new.
I'll force his ass every single time. I'll force his ass left. That little step back ain't gonna work. You literally did your step back every time. Tony couldn't even move his feet to guard you.
All right, well now you're giving him what he needs to work on. Title's out shooting shots middle of the night.
He'll definitely
working in the
work
gym.
on
So
it.
now he's just got to work on the left, and then he's going to dummy you with the left when he plays you too.
Yeah,
we're going to get it going at an event this year. We'll see it.
I'll keep forcing him left. He's got no left. Pull the video, Title. I'll watch the video. I'll rip you too when you pull that step back.
Man, I could talk about this stuff all day. Anything else?
Yeah. No, I think we talked about enough. I mean, we got a few more lineups that people sent me, but it was a little late, so we'll get to them next week, guys. I apologize if you sent me a lineup and I didn't get back to you. It was kind of like last minute. Try for next week, guys. Try and send me lineups like an hour or two before the show starts, because it's easier with our producer and with us.
We're putting a cutoff. You got to have them in the night before so that we can get them to our producer.
Or the night before.
You want your best shot. Your best shot to get them on the show. That's the way.
That's the way to do it. It's really hard for us. I know you guys probably forget about it and then are like, oh, shoot the show. And
set a reminder in your phone, especially if you got an iPhone. Yeah. It's very easy to do. You should have an iPhone. You put it in there. You say send JSU lineup after lock. And if you then, you know what, could be good mojo. You go on to ship and you're sending him a winner, but when you set the reminder, you didn't know if you were going to ship or not. So that's the thing about that. And then we'll get it on the show. It's much easier. We'll get it over to our producer and get it up on the show.
I like it. Tambo's hard stance. He said, no. You got to send him the lineup that right away. The night before.
Title, man. You got to run your ship. Get it lined up and make it happen. It's simple. Angle it to how you want it, and you get it that way.
Thank you, Tam. The producer appreciates you, Tambo. I think I tilted Title a little bit. He's telling me to pull the video. I don't know what he wants me to watch in the video. I saw you stroke, Title. I saw Big T literally couldn't move his feet, and you were shooting wide open threes. I literally saw what you were doing. I don't need to pull the video for it. You can shoot a three. I understand that. Can you do anything else?
That's the benefit of your guys' game. That's why you shouldn't get odds, because you're saying it's not just a shooting contest where we know
he's win. Saying, I hate the bullshit when these fucking 5'10", 5'11" guys are like, it's like shooting over a chair. I'm telling you right now, it's not like shooting over a chair. The chair is going to punch back at you. And I'm telling you also, you ain't going to be able to just call fouls whenever you think you fouled someone. That was the worst rule of them all. I'll never let Tony live it down that he let Title ran the fucking game. Tony got owned. I'll say that. Tony got absolutely owned in every way. He knows it though. So that's all I'll say. That's all I'm going to say. All right, Title Town. I do love you, buddy. You are one of my favorites here. You know that. But Tambo, let's get out of here, man. It was a great show. Hopefully people liked it. If you did like it, or you have any type of, constructive criticism or whatever for us, you want us to talk about something different, hit us up. We're cool. We'll listen to you guys. And again, good luck. We'll see you guys in week 3 for Toe Tag and Tambo. I'm JSU. We are out of here.